Hello, everyone, and welcome. We're so glad to see so many folks joining the call. I know some folks are still joining, but we want to go ahead and get started. My name is Tommaso Canetta. I'm a member of the recruiting team here at Analysis Group, and we are excited to kick off this week's EngAGement series. And we have 3 great events planned for you this week. We hope you're able to join for all 3 events, and we'll kick things off today with our information session. And so the goal of today's session will be just to introduce you to Analysis Group and our work and our people. And then we hope that you'll join us for our sessions tomorrow and Thursday to continue to learn about AG and how to apply. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it off to Nick Van Niel, Vice President in our Boston office, who will be leading today's session. If you do have any questions, we will have some time towards the end for Q&A, and you can submit those questions using the Q&A function here on Zoom. But again, thank you all for joining, and Nick, I'll pass it off to you.
Great, thank you so much. Welcome, everyone. It's very nice to have a great group of attendees joining us today. Introduce myself, and then I'll pass it to Marimer, Tom, and Haley. The 4 of us will be walking you through an introduction to Analysis Group today. Analysis Group is an economic consulting firm, and we have offices in the United States as well as several internationally. And this presentation is targeted to give you more information about what it is like to be an associate at Analysis Group. And so the associate position is for postgraduate school people. So I just wanted to give you that quick introduction. If you think you're in the wrong place or sort of wondering why you're here or how you ended up at the Zoom, now you can decide and confirm that you're in the right place, hopefully. So my name is Nick Van Niel. I joined Analysis Group in 2010. I worked at the firm for about 4 or 5 years as an analyst. And then I went to do my MBA at MIT Sloan, did an internship elsewhere, and decided to return post my MBA to join the firm as an associate. And then I have been here coming up on, almost 10 years, I'd say. And I am now a vice president in the Boston office, and I work on many different types of cases, which is one of the benefits that we'll highlight. But specifically, I often work on cases related to healthcare, both in strategic settings as well as litigation settings. I'll pass to Marimer, Tom, and Haley, and they will give brief introductions, and then we'll jump in with more information about Analysis Group.
Hi, everyone, and I can start. My name is Marimer Guevara. I am an associate in the Los Angeles office at AG. Just like Nick, I also completed my MBA at MIT Sloan and joined as an associate immediately after. I was not an analyst before, and I've been here I started in the Boston office, and I've been at AG for around 3 years. And I've been working in also several cases, which is a theme while you work at AG. One of the great things is that you can explore as many industries as you want. But I have been doing a little bit of marketing, a little bit of technology, and also a little bit of health.
I'm Tom Cornwall. I'm an associate in the Montreal office. I've been at AG for 4 years. Before that, I did a PhD in economics at the University of British Columbia. And I work in both litigation and in healthcare, and we'll talk more about that later. And I do a little bit of data science work as well.
Hi, my name is Haley Nguyen, and I'm an associate from the New York office. I joined AG full-time.
Oh, I think Haley might have had some connectivity issues. We will go ahead, and hopefully Haley will be able to reconnect. All right, great. So we'll go to the next slide. I think we will cover a few things today to give people an overview of both Analysis Group as well as the responsibilities specific to an associate at Analysis Group. And the purpose of this is really to inform people of kind of what is the organization, who we are that are part of the organization, and hopefully this is both informative, but also it makes you a little bit excited about potentially working at Analysis Group. Haley, we'll pass it back to you just for a minute if you want to finish your introduction. We heard that you're Haley, an associate in the New York office.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry about that. I just got kicked out of the Zoom for some reason. Yeah, so again, I'm Haley. I'm an associate from the New York office. I joined last August, so almost a year at AG right now. Before that, I did my PhD at Columbia in economics, and I interned at AG in the summer of 2020. And so far at AG, I've been working on a variety of cases, as is the case with most people, but primarily in finance and insurance.
Great. All right. So any questions? We will have an opportunity to kind of write in questions through the Zoom, and we're happy to save some time at the end, last 5-10 minutes, to respond to as many questions as we're able to. So if you have any questions about our experiences, background, how we ended up at Analysis Group, why we end up at Analysis Group, hopefully we'll cover a little bit of that throughout the presentation. But if you want more, feel free to ping us in the chat. So I'll start off with just an introduction of kind of who we are. We're one of the largest economic consulting firms that was founded more than 30 years ago. We're privately held. We are a partnership. So we have, I think, a little bit more than 50 partners throughout the organization now. And these partners are in all different offices, both international and domestic. And a lot of our work is covered by 1,000 professionals. We refer to ourselves as consultants across these 14 offices. So these consultants are at various stages. We have analysts, as we referred to, associates, which is the position we'll highlight today. And then we have more senior leaders, managers, vice presidents, and then managing principals or partners at the organization. One of the things that we'll come back to throughout the presentation is Analysis Group's close collaboration with leading experts. And so Analysis Group, a large chunk of our work, is supporting academic or industry experts in fields to support them in creating opinions either for strategic engagements or for litigations. And so we will help the experts prepare what is referred to as expert reports. And we will help the experts in doing background research, data analysis, and then the expert will draft the report based on a lot of the kind of work that we've done to help prepare the expert for the engagement. One of the things that I think really excites me about working at Analysis Group every day is the team and the people that work at Analysis Group. I work in a highly collaborative environment with people that are both graduates of college, experts in data science, professionals, and kind of experts in the healthcare industry. And this kind of close collaboration that's on the nexus of academia, the business world, and the legal world results in a very unique experience that can often inform legal policy, maybe general policy that's slightly disconnected from the legal sphere, and then also result in a lot of major studies that have large scale impacts on potential kind of economic implications of certain energy developments or job implications or things like that. The collaborations that we have with professionals are sort of global. So we work with a lot of professionals in the United States, but we also work with people in Europe as well as in Asia. And so if we go to the next slide, you'll see the various locations that we have offices in throughout the world. And as you'll see, most of our offices in the United States, but we have a growing presence in Europe as well as in Beijing, China. In all of these offices, there are associate positions. Most of our experiences are targeted in North America, Montreal, New York, Los Angeles, and Boston. If we go to slide 4, just introduce this, and then I'll pass to Tom to cover it as well. Where a lot of the work that we do is with leading organizations. I'm working with 2 of, the Fortune 20 right now in various engagements, and we work with very high-profile clients, often in engagements that cover the news, either from legal implications or in a strategic capacity. Tom, do you want to talk a little bit about some of your work in kind of the impact that it's had?
Sure. Thanks, Nick. So as I said before, I do work in both litigation and in healthcare, and I think one of the healthcare cases that I'm currently working on is relevant here. So we're working with a client that has a very successful drug, and when I say very successful, I mean that it works for many different indications, which is great. But the challenge is that for each indication that it works for, and for each country that they want the drug to be prescribed in, they need to go through a separate set of regulatory approvals. And we're talking about hundreds of regulatory approvals across these different countries. Each one needs a different cost effectiveness analysis. And so AG has partnered with this company to basically build a application to auto-generate or more or less auto-generate cost-effectiveness analyses in these different for these different indications and in these different countries. And so I was, interested in the case and brought onto the case because I heard about, well, here's an opportunity to build skills in application level project management. It turns out that the drug that we're working on, and I found out later, is a drug that actually saved my dad's life. So I was pretty excited about joining the case for that reason as well. And so that's, on the healthcare side. Nick, would you like an example for litigation as well?
Yeah, and it may also be interesting. We have a fairly large pro bono area as well. And so it might be interesting for people to hear not only about some of the work that we do in healthcare as well as in litigation, but also to highlight some pro bono experiences that you've had recently.
Sure. So on the pro bono side, I had some connections through my academic work with an organization in Canada called Informed Opinions. And what Informed Opinions does is that they document the disparity in the gender of people who are quoted as authorities in news. So they've been following this for about 10 years, and there's a pretty consistent pattern, at least in Canadian news, and there's evidence that it's similar in the US, that about 70% of the people quoted in news articles are men. And so there's a question of, is that, I think there's reason to believe that that's sort of distorting the perspectives of what people read and see on TV relative to sort of an unbiased sample of the population. And so what they have is they have a machine learning algorithm that automatically categorizes the gender of people quoted in the news based on essentially their name and the sort of pronouns that are used to refer to them in the article. And they have this tracker that says how this has changed over time. But what they were interested in is digging deeper into this and doing some analytical work to figure out what's driving these gender disparities and sort of what policies could they advocate for that could potentially address them. And so what we worked with on that, or what we worked with on that case was sort of, we got a huge amount of data from them, which was great because they had this sort of data categorized by articles, so millions of different data points, and then trying to figure out, okay, so what are groups that we can identify within this data that tell us more, that can sort of distinguish between different possible hypotheses for what's driving the gender gap. And that's a case that's ongoing. And then on the litigation side, I've been working on a number of cases involving survey data, and I may talk more about these later, but the nice thing about those cases is there's been a string of 4 or 5 cases, false advertising cases, patent infringement cases. They all kind of use the same tools. And so each case, we don't have to sort of deal with the same details of the case every time. So it's fresh because we move on to a new case, but we get to sort of build our skills, learn more about the tools, apply arguments we used on previous cases to subsequent cases. And each time we sort of get better, get more effective. And so I've enjoyed that aspect of the work of sort of being able to apply past cases to future cases.
That's really interesting, Tom. Thanks. And so on the next slide, we have several questions that, we both as an associate and just generally consultants at Analysis Group may be trying to address and answer when engaging in their work. And I'd say, one of the things about Analysis Group is that you're not hired into a specific practice area. So we work on cases in healthcare, finance, in marketing, as Tom was just talking about. And all of these various kind of practice areas, and the exhaustive set is on our website, give you the opportunity to not only learn about different fields over time, but it also gives you the opportunity to apply the skill set, as Tom was saying. You build up a certain set of skills on a given case, and then you can apply it in kind of your next case. And that has been very rewarding, I think, for a lot of us over time as we start to build certain expertise in areas of both analysis and domain expertise that we can then leverage for future cases. So some of the questions, we work on merger cases and energy cases, looking at economic impacts of various energy initiatives, the kind of treatment saving lives. Tom was referencing, some of our work in HEOR, which is healthcare economics and outcomes research, and understanding, treatment effectiveness, the economic burden of certain disease areas, the cost effectiveness of using a drug relative to not having that drug, as well as the impact of a given stock price kind of change relative to some event. And so oftentimes we're trying to understand, in this sort of but-for scenario of a given set of assumptions, what types of economic scenarios would have played out, and how do we estimate kind of market demand and quantity and price in that environment. We have a few questions so far that we will cover when we get into the specific qualifications, but feel free to continue firing questions as you have them. We can go to the next slide, which is a little bit about our culture. And Tom, I'll kick it back to you to talk about kind of what are some of the things that you enjoy about the collegial environment of Analysis Group.
For sure. Yeah, so I mentioned earlier, working on these different types of cases, the analytical standard, so this speaks to excellence and rigor, is very high. And I think that's because in litigation work, there's always an adversary on the other side. And so if you make arguments that aren't tight, or there's a flaw in the argument, there's a good chance that the other side will find those flaws and will make us look silly. And so we spent a lot of time thinking about how do we make these arguments as watertight as possible, anticipating possible responses. And I really appreciate that about the work, that the content of what we're doing matters. It's not just, oh, we need to make an argument, and as long as it looks kind of okay, then we're fine. I'd also say that I work in the Montreal office. Most of the firm works in other offices. Boston's obviously very large. And so I spent a lot of time working with people in different offices. And the culture of AG, that has really worked very well. And I'm not, even though I'm in the Montreal office, it's not that people in Montreal ever say, oh, Tom, you've been working a lot with these people in other offices. I need you to be focused more on Montreal work. that's never a conversation that's happened. As long as I'm doing good work and the people I'm working with are happy, that's enough. And that is partly, I think, related to, so there's a culture of trust and respect at AG. I think this is something that a lot of companies will claim exist, and to some extent it's, true or not, I can't evaluate in other places. One thing that I think differentiates AG and really drives this culture is that so the way work is allocated at AG is that people work on cases and we have a choice of what cases to work on. So if I have time and someone says, asks me if I want to work on a case, I can say yes. I can look for other work. Obviously, I can't sit around doing nothing for weeks on end. But the idea is, because I have a choice about the cases I take and who I work with, there's a real incentive for managers to be nice to the people that they work with or who are working for them, because if they aren't, they won't come back. And so that's kind of the way I think about it, is that's the hammer that sort of maintains that culture of trust and respect, that people who don't manage in that way or don't work well in that way don't stick around. And I would say that the other aspect of that, or something that is related to that as well, is that there's a big emphasis on development at AG, and that's partly because even though the relationships are not, I have a formal supervisor, I tend to work on cases with people the same people on multiple cases over time. And so those people are invested in my development and my growth because they want to grow and develop themselves. And, for them to take on new roles and do new exciting things, they have to teach me to do more as well. And so one of the sort of, there's a nice balance of, I work with people on repeated cases, so I develop these relationships with them and they're invested, but I also get to work with many different groups of people. And so I pick up new skills and sort of new ways of thinking about problems from different managers, and then get to apply those in the future. So there's sort of a nice balance there. And I think that, personally, I found that AG's been very welcoming. I mentioned the project that I was working on earlier about gender gaps, and that was a project that leadership in Montreal was really enthusiastic about encouraging me to take on and to bring in, even though it's pro bono work, it's not billable, but people were excited about the project content for sure.
Awesome. It's really interesting to hear about those experiences, and I think it gets at some of the reasons why we enjoy the culture of analysis group in this kind of collaborative collegial environment where we're all trying to support each other, both professionally, but also when people need times for personal things as well. I know the firm has been very supportive of various things that recently had children, and the firm has been so supportive of that effort, and I really appreciate everything that not only the firm has done formally, but my colleagues have asked about, constantly asking about my family, which I really appreciate. Our list of questions is growing a little bit longer, so I'm just going to try to run through a few of these and hopefully give people a little bit of a better sense about the work that we do at Analysis Group, and then we'll kind of dive right into the associate role specifically. So typically, projects and cases can last on the shortest end, probably a month or 2 months, and on the longest end, maybe several years. And the cases that I'll work on, typically I'll work on a case for about 6 months or so. And there will be some kind of research phase, analysis phase, some intermediate presentations, and then there will be kind of an ultimate presentation. I've been working on helping company implement algorithms. We'll turn over code to develop the algorithm, or we'll have some type of portal instead of visualizations or expert report or things like that at the end of our projects. The staffing model, as Tom alluded to, is what we call as an internal labor market. So people are able to kind of navigate the cases themselves. So you come into analysis group and you're staffed on one case, and then as you finish that case and have time, you're able to kind of gather your connections and leverage your interests to see, okay, here are the different cases that are going on within the firm. Here are the cases I'm interested in. Some people will balance 4 or 5 cases. Some people will rather fill their time with one case. I'd say all of us on the call are probably working on anywhere from 2 to 5 cases. The practice areas do vary across offices. They will try to highlight a little bit of that as we talk through the 4 offices that we come from. I'd say Boston is the largest office, having probably close to 500 consultants out of the little more than 1,000. And so in Boston, you'll have probably every practice area that is represented, and then it's a little bit more specialized depending on the practice area that you're in. But I'd just come back to Tom's point of, we're one firm. I think especially after the 2020 world and our kind of better connectivity in a remote and hybrid environment, our cross-office collaboration is more common now than it has ever been. And so there are definitely people in all offices that work on all different types of cases. So the expectation is that you are hired to a specific office and you are able to be in that office in person at least some portion of the week. Then there are some role-specific questions, and we will talk about those when we get to the specific role. I'd say just covering economic consulting versus maybe say management consulting. Economic consulting typically is very research and data focused. It is oftentimes supporting litigation projects. So I'd say a little bit more than half of the firm's work is in a litigation capacity. And that is not something that management consultancies will typically take on. Great. We will continue on with the presentation. I'll talk a little bit about the firm's diversity and inclusion efforts, which are, as Tom mentioned, kind of highlight a lot of our pro bono work that we've recently been working with. But we also have various kind of affinity groups within the organization that a lot of people are part of, both as members as well as allies. And that group puts on various types of events. We have kind of a seminar right now from an academic who's doing, I think it's actually 12 to 1 during the same time of an academic that's doing some research on pay equity. And they're presenting to anyone that wants to join. And we're learning about different methods that we can adopt within analysis group to keep up to date on both gender equity and ideas kind of cutting edge. The diversity of an analysis group, I'd say, is just truly remarkable. It's remarkable not only in kind of the ways that we've listed here, but just the background of experiences. And there are a few questions around, do you need to have certain quantitative experience? Do you need to have a certain type of degree or expertise? And the answer is no. Typically, we think that people who have either PhDs in economics or MBAs with certain kind of interest in the fields that we work in are best suited for the work, but we have fantastic employees who have a variety of backgrounds and degrees. And so that collaboration and diversity of thought is one of the things that we really pride ourselves in an analysis group. I'd say the last thing I'll just highlight on the slide is the inclusive culture. I think the whole self to work is a really a point that resonates with me, and I know Marimer well. It's everyone who I work with is constantly asking how I am doing and the goals that I have for myself, not only as a professional, but as a person. And so the kind of the opportunities that I am given at analysis group people are constantly looking out for the development that I have. We have kind of an extensive, comprehensive 360 development process where you're getting reviewed, twice a year, feedback from your peers that's written up. And those conversations reflect a tremendous investment from the firm in each individual and their growth and mentorship at Analysis Group. I will pass it along to Marimer, who's going to talk about the associate role specifically. I think some of the questions that are highlighted in the Q&A will be answered through this, and those that are not, we'll try to continue getting to them throughout the presentation. Thank you all. Here's Marimer.
Sure. Thank you, Nick. I would say that the associate role to me has been one of the most challenging and fun career experiences I have had. When I joined after my MBA, I thought I was gonna be in this very prescribed role where they would tell me exactly what to do, and that there was gonna be a formula for litigation, the type of writing involved, the type of analysis around it. But I was actually very mistaken. I think that the associate role is actually very unique in terms of the type of people that you work with, and also how creative and how analytical you have to be to find these types of economic and financial analysis that will support reports and your experts. And just to talk a little bit more precisely about the associate role, I wanted to give you an example of 2 cases that I joined as soon as I started at Analysis Group. Both of them were actually related to false advertisement. So consumers in a class action against companies, both of them actually in this case were beverage companies, telling them that they felt deceived. So one of them said that the packaging of a particular product was just providing them with completely with information that was not accurate, and the other class action was related to advertisement on the Super Bowl. So even though both of the cases were similar in terms of the type of litigation that they entailed, the type of work that I got to do in both of them was extremely different. In one of them, for example, our expert was an in-house partner. So she provided me with a lot of mentorship in terms of, usually we create this type of surveys where we need to ask about the budget of the client. She also told me these are the team members in-house that can help you understand, how do we launch a survey, design a survey, collect information, do statistical analysis, and then actually create the type of graphs and or reports inside AG best practices. On the other case, we were actually working with a leading academic in Los Angeles, actually at UCLA, and he was a little bit more, he just had ideas in mind, right? So there was a lot more collaboration and communication skills that were required there to understand what he wanted to do in terms of analyzing information provided by the client, and also how we could help him based on the experiences that people on our team had. So just from that perspective of having an in-house expert or an external academic expert, the type of work that you can do as an associate varies, but both of them provide you with ample opportunity to work independently, right? You sit down and go through documentation, do online research, read through academic papers, obtain as much information regarding the key economic issues that you have for these cases. And at the same time, you also work with your teams. Once you have the information or you have questions or you're just trying to you have an idea that you want to run with your team members, that environment exists, and you're more than welcome to just like raise your hand and be like, this is my understanding, am I correct? Or I know that I'm new, but I have this idea. Should we go after that? And the AG and the associate role, it's you know, they just have all of this space for you to like grow as much as you want. I know that a lot of the questions were related to like, what are we looking for as an associate? And I would say there is not, as Nick was saying, like there is no real background, a specific background that you need. There are some qualifications that most of the people that we work with have. People are just curious. They like to work independently, and they also like to work in teams. They are very detailed oriented. We do go and read lots of legal documents, and sometimes we need to pick up information from testimony or from papers or from just very dense legal documents that can be like hundreds of pages. So just being able to pick up, to understand what the economic or financial model that we're tackling is, making sure that we're collecting information from this documentation is very important. We also want people who are confident, and this doesn't, it does not mean that you are the leader at everything. It just means that you are happy to raise your hand and say, this is what my idea is, or I understand that the partner says I have to do A, B, and C, but I actually read this document and I think that something else might be a better way of dealing with the situation, and that it's great. Like no one will ever stop you and say, you just joined last year, you know nothing. Like that has never been my experience. You also are strong in quantitative and qualitative skills. As I mentioned, there will be a lot of analysis, and we do have lots of training that you get as an associate in terms of like coding and modeling, also writing and things of the sort. But you just need to make sure that that's what inspires you, right? Like at the end of the day, we are consultants in an analytical company. And so just having that curiosity, academic curiosity, it will really help you with your careers at AG. And then we say that it'll be interesting, or it can be good just in terms of like your career development if you're interested in economics, finance, statistics, or epidemiology. But again, we just have so many industries and so many types of cases that my background was on a little bit of energy, and I did get involved with that. And it's one of those things that it was neither econ nor finance, but there was a space for me for that. Moving into
go ahead. I'll just add, I think analysis group, especially the associate role, and Tommaso, feel free to go to the next slide. It's one of the very few places that I've come across where you can work running advanced analytics on 1 hour, whether it be machine learning models, econometric models, various, dealing with nearly a terabyte of data on one of my cases, large scale data efforts. And then, that same day I can be writing memos, summarizing, research and industry trends and things like that. You really have such a unique blend of experience at Analysis Group. And I think that's one of the things that's such a great continuation of both the MBA and the PhD program, where you're able to sharpen not only the analytical skills that you have and everyone learns coding through the training resource programs that we offer, but also you sharpen a lot of your more qualitative and team building skills as well, and that's something that I found really rewarding. I'll just answer 2 questions that have come up before you get into the next slide, Marimer. Where there's very limited travel for the associate role, we're very rarely on site with clients. We do most of our work remotely. So we receive information from our clients, and then we process that information on our systems, and then we give presentations and so forth. And sometimes there will be a group that travels for kind of ultimate presentations, but I'd say it's, maybe once every few months, if that. And then,
this was just to add, Nick,
ahead,
this is not, this is not COVID related. This has always been our model of business. We've never really worked that much, traveled that much.
Yep. Great. And then the salaries and so forth, any questions about that? We'll try to stay highly competitive within the industry, and any specific questions on kind of the salaries or positions, certainly you can ask the organizers of this if you have further questions. One thing is, a typical hour for us is 40 hours. So 8 times 5, 40 hours. And the expectation is, that people are spending most of their time on billable work, but the firm also has allotments for some of the pro bono work out of that 40 hours, as well as some of the marketing efforts that Miramar talked about, supporting various partners in terms of business development and stuff, all kind of contributes to that 40 hours. There are times that are significantly busier, but I'd say on average, hovering right around that 40 hours is very typical. All right, sorry to interrupt, Miramar, go ahead.
Oh, this is all great information, Nick. As I was saying, the associate role, it's very challenging, but also fun. So we do get a lot of support at AG, formally and informally, to make sure that you're successful in the role. So on the one hand, we have formal training. You get an advisor that it's usually, if you're an associate, it's usually a VP. That person will talk to you, as Nick was saying, regarding your career path, but also your personal goals, to make sure that you are connected with the right people, that you are getting into the right type of cases, and that you have that you're working on diverse areas and industries, so that you get the whole experience of AG. There is a big AG orientation once you join. This is like everyone for all of the firms. It happens in Boston. And this is when actually you realize how diverse people are. In all of the cases that we have, we actually do not separate. PhDs associates only work with PhDs, and like MBA associates only work with MBAs. There's like collaboration between everyone. There's also data scientists. There are people that are extremely quantitative, right? Like coders. They have done amazing coding that are even more sophisticated than the ones that we used at AG for their thesis, for example. And doing this AG orientation, just by informally talking to people, you realize that, oh, I actually have never coded in my life, or I have had, particularly for me, I had like 2 or 3 coding classes at MIT. But then I realized that maybe I had information like technology, which was my previous experience. And then getting to know these people and understanding that the strengths and how they could complement each other was perfect for when you're like actually looking for cases, because you don't get assigned to cases. You like kind of look for the type of cases that you want to work for. There's associate onboarding. This happens actually through the months, and you get different types of languages, programming languages for coding. You also get information on what is the litigation system to start with, what's a plaintiff, what's a defendant, what is to be on trial, what is to be an expert, what is a report, all of these like very basic concepts that I actually did not know when I joined AG. So it was great to learn as we went. But at the same time, you're working on a case in real time. So you're also learning from coaching and mentoring of real people at the real job. So you have this case apprenticeship model where you're actually learning from the senior analyst, which actually knows a lot and will support you at the beginning as an associate, but you also get lots of information from senior associates, managers, and VPs, and even partners that will just provide you with information on cases, best practices, and how to get that information that you need. There's also peer mentor programs. This is just less of a hierarchy. So you get like people exactly like you that you can ask any kind of silly questions. I know that when we were a lot more on site, like I didn't know how to print. I didn't know what I had to print. I didn't know how I had to like shred information that was, not to be seen publicly. And so all of these questions, I will go to like my associate peer mentor and just ask. And yeah, so like overall, I think it just comes to, we have online training on AG University. You have daily communication with people in your teams, outside of your teams via mentors. And there's also like a big community building with just general events. In the LA office, we had a summer party at the beach just 2 weeks ago. And we're gonna have like a big sailing destination event at the marina also in the next couple of months, just to get to know summer interns, say bye to summer interns, and just get to know
you
each
have
other.
like Haley, Tom, and I were like in the Northeast.
I know.
We're like shivering while you're talking about sailing and
I do remember all of the Boston cool events that I will not get anymore. Boston gets amazing Christmas parties at like museums that are super fancy. And you guys also get like to go to cruises and like harbor events in the summer. So you wouldn't complain about these things. But yes, We also had a Cinco de Mayo happy hour. So each office has like different types of community building. I actually got to be on a case in LA just from going to one of these events and you know, talking to people that I did not know before, because I just recently moved to LA. So it's one of those things. It's all about networking internally too.
Awesome. Yeah, and I think this also highlights, you know, there's been a question about the career at AG after the associate role, and I think this covers this very well. So Marima, I think it'd be great to cover this.
Yeah, so just very quickly, because I also want to get to everyone's questions. The firm has analysts. People get promoted in, I think, like a year and a half or 2 years to senior analysts usually. And then either people get hired into the associate role after MBA, PhDs type of programs, master programs sometimes, or senior analysts go and get a graduate degree and come back as an associate. After the associate role, you work, it can be anything. I think there's no prescription really, and it's not that like you just hit a number of hours or you hit like a number of years and then you're like automatically promoted, but it's more about you organically growing into the manager role. And once the firm recognizes that you are pretty much doing a manager role is when you will get promoted. This usually happens between like the 3-4 year mark after being an associate. Some people are like super quick at this, or they come, like I know that there were like professors were associates and then like quickly moved to manager and things like that. So it's on a very one-on-one basis, and an AG doesn't have like a formula for promotions or anything like that. Then the vice presidents and managing principals, I think, are longer time commitment. But as Nick was saying, like he's been at AG for 10 years and he's now vice president. So that gives you an idea of, you know, how fast the progression is. Yeah, and I think that's all I had to say here in terms of career path.
All right, so I'm gonna be talking about the summer internship at AG with you guys. So as an intern in 2020, speaking from my own experience, I truly believe that the internship is a great opportunity for you to experience the type of work that we do, as well as the firm culture at AG. And most importantly, to see for yourself whether AG would be a good fit for you. The internship typically kicks off in early June, and I believe it usually lasts around 10 weeks. And during these 10 weeks, you will get exposure to casework, different types of learning and development at AG, as well as fun social events in different offices as well. So first, in terms of casework, typically interns will be staffed on real casework, at least one real case. So depending on where the case is in its life cycle, you might be doing research work, you might be reviewing documentations, or you might be directly working on the analysis for the case or assisting on drafting the expert reports for the case as well. Essentially, I think the cool thing is the work you do will be exactly the same as the work that a full-time associate would be doing. So this will be a really great opportunity to give you a real sense of the work, so you could have a good understanding of the questions we're trying to tackle on a daily basis. And speaking from my experience, I think the opportunity for hands-on learning is something that really resonated with me as an intern, and also now as well as a full-time associate. Prior to joining AG as an intern, I was doing my PhD in economics, and I did not have much experience in finance. However, during my internship, I joined a finance case, and I was given space to learn about the context of the case, as well as different techniques that are typically used in a finance case. And I also appreciate my teammates being very open to my own suggestions, so I could volunteer my own ideas and apply my economics training to the case. All right, so besides the cases and the practice areas that you're directly working on, you'll also get the chance to get exposure to other types of practice areas as well. And you'll get to know other people in the office through lunches with your peers and senior staffs. And you'll be able to explore different practice areas through different practice area info sessions. Okay, so next up, a very big emphasis at AG is on learning and development, as you have heard from Nick and Marimer. And learning and development at AG happen through training, mentorship, and feedback, all of which you will experience during your summer at AG. In terms of training, you'll have the chance to go through the same trainings that a full-time associate would. So besides hands-on learning during casework, you'll also have access to AGU, which is an online platform that AG maintains with trainings in different case practice areas, as well as technical training programs in Excel, SAS, and other programming languages like Stata, R, and Python. From my experience, both as an intern and a full-time associate, these training sessions are really useful for casework. And in terms of mentorship, as Marimer mentioned earlier, all full-time associates at AG will have a formal mentor as well as a peer mentor, and we're replicating that for you as well. So every intern will have a peer mentor, an advisor, and senior staff contact. And besides these formal training and mentorship structure, learning also happens through feedback. And throughout the 10 weeks you're with us, we will replicate for you the process of evaluation that we use for our full-time associates. So every intern will have a midterm and an end of summer review based on feedback collected from your case members. And your advisor is going to communicate the feedback to you. And hopefully this will show you how formal feedback is often done at AG. And all right, so finally, I'd like to talk about the fun things that we do at AG. Besides showing you the work and the culture at the firm, we'd also really like you to have fun, enjoy your summer with us, and get to know us outside of the office and outside of casework. Typically, there will be a number of social events organized for you and your colleagues that take place over the course of the summer. So as Marimer mentioned, there were a lot of fun events happening in LA, but I'm sure other offices have cool things happening as well. So to highlight a few, when I was an intern in 2020, we couldn't have any social events in person. So there were quite a few happy hours over Zoom, as well as virtual scavenger hunt. This year, the interns are having a lot more fun than I did earlier. For example, in our New York office, we've had a scavenger hunt in Manhattan. We've had a couple of happy hours so far. Last week, we had an office event at a Mets game. And in a couple of weeks, we're going to do a golfing event somewhere in Manhattan as well. Typically, everyone has a ton of fun. It's really a great chance for people to get to know each other outside of the office. And I'm sure that whichever office that you join, you'll have a great time getting to know your colleagues.
Haley, thank you so much. And I just, we have about 5 minutes left with our 12 to 1 session. And I just want to give a shout out to, there are 2 more sessions, both Wednesday and Thursday. Wednesday will be kind of a more in-depth dive into some of, oh, perfect, an interactive case session. So that'll be Wednesday, 6 p.m. And feel free to, contact Tommaso if you need the link to how to view these sessions. And then the Thursday session is specifically about the intern and full-time application process. The transition, I just highlight, Tom, maybe the transition from your PhD program to AG. Maybe if you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I would say that in terms of the analytical skills that I used during the PhD, that was quite similar. So I did a bunch of machine learning in my PhD, and then I did machine learning at AG. As Marimer mentioned, I started doing stuff at AG that I'd never done during my PhD, so analyzing survey data. I would say the biggest change is in terms of communication. So when I was in the PhD program, I might talk with my advisor once a week, and you need to communicate a lot more frequently at AG because the cases move much faster. And so there's an adjustment on that side, but not so much in terms of the work itself.
I'd say just one of the big transitions for people is working in a collaborative environment where you need to be documenting all of your steps in a way that someone else could pick up your analysis at any intermediate step and take over if for some reason, you need support because you want someone to quality check your work, or you need, collaborating with someone else to share the workload. So I'd say that collaborative step is often something that I think, a lot of programs, both PhD and MBA, prepare people well for, but it's often one of the biggest learning kind of experience things that is a big transition. Any other questions in the final minutes? I just highlight, I think one thing that kind of keeps me coming back to analysis group is that real focus on me as I forget the exact language, but it was like focus on the individual as a whole, and not just that, we really pride ourselves in this not being a transactional environment of I need this done, someone does it and then sends it back to me. There's a real focus on empowering people to speak up with ideas that they have about ways that, we can approach the best path forward, as well as where do people want to be working, both through the informal labor market, or the internal labor market, and then the ultimate is through the review process and the mentoring to really speak up about opportunities that people want. And we try to match that up as best as we can. So I'd encourage you all to attend, the sessions Wednesday and Thursday, if those are of interest to you. But I'd also just say thank you for your time. We know that regardless of your time zone, international in the United States, Canada, wherever you are, this may be either lunchtime, breakfast time, dinner time. So thank you for joining and taking time out of your day. We really appreciate it.
Great. Thank you, Nick, Mayor, Tom, and Haley. Appreciate all of your insights and experiences that you shared. And again, thank you all for joining. And we hope to see you at one of the upcoming sessions later this week. Thank you all.